And the hat collection too, man. You gotta get that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's that Elvis picture
is not real. Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, you added in there. Yeah, but
That's still funny.
But the rest of them are all real. And that's me playing lacrosse. And I still play every Sunday. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Those are the royal family of Denmark.
oh really?
Yeah.
How'd you meet them?
Well, we were friends with their friends, and I ended up representing some members of their family.
Oh wow,
So
that's awesome.
yeah, it's kind of cool.
Wow.
And that guy number 50 there, that famous football player, see him there?
Mhm.
That's me when I was 23.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Played
Nice.
semi-pro football for the Long Island Giants.
Cool.
I was a little bigger than those days,
Well, yeah, you had to be back then to play. Nice.
Yeah. So
So have they said if have they ever messaged you and said if that's a bone or not, human bone?
they have not, and that's what triggered my thoughts about you guys again. It was that
They won't even call me back. I've called. I've left messages.
really, it's kind of odd. It struck me as odd because, well, for several reasons. First, here they are. They show up again,
Mhm.
and they're looking around. I am trying to get the particulars. I don't have them yet, as to whether they went into the marsh or into the brush over in Gilgo. I don't know. But so why would there be a considerable number of police personnel there?
I bought a drone yesterday, and by the time I got everything operated, the sun was going down. But we put it in the air, and we angled the camera down right over the brush. I mean, you can perfectly see. So that's what we're about to go do.
So you
leave
thinking
here.
because that they wouldn't be looking there for no reason?
If it wasn't a human bone, they wouldn't be
they're
looking.
there for a reason, and if it were 5 cops or something like that, it could be any number of reasons. But if there's a considerable number, and I don't know what that number would be yet, as we're trying to find out, then they're looking for something. They're clearly looked at. You don't bring a pile of cops from just to stand around and report something. They're searching for something. So then the question becomes, why are they now searching? The answer to that is manifold. There could be so many things. So, for example, it could be that Rodney Harrison or Tierney or both said to them, hey, go back out there and look. You guys haven't looked in a few years. Let's go. Get back out there. It could be that.
Mm-hmm.
But it could be that the bone triggered something, and that gave me a thought too, is that if that was a human bone, then they belong out there. They should be out there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So, I don't know. I mean, they told me when you were there, well, you weren't with me. You guys had walked behind me, and I had gone down. I drove with the cop, and back to the parking lot after we had been there.
Mm-hmm.
And they told me that if anything, develops about this bone, we'll let you know.
Right.
And then they haven't let me know.
But they won't even let us know if it's not human.
So
or
why
not.
not call me and say, hey, good
was
try,
nothing.
but it was nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of odd that they're negligent as hell about a lot of things. They have been anyway. So I'm not surprised either if it were just a matter of saying, oh, I forgot to call Jon Ray. I just didn't think of it.
Yeah, no, I've left
that could
messages.
be, right?
And they won't. But no, I plan on stopping by and actually telling them, like, hey.
Or it could be that they're pursuing one of the theories
Mm-hmm.
that we've given them, and they're finally waking up to it. For example, once I had told them that I had discovered a punt, sort of a boat in the marsh, overgrown,
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I don't think that's. I told them about it. I said, I don't think that thing, the boat metal thing, was or fiberglass was necessarily an item used by Hackett or somebody in the marsh, because it's found near to a foundation that of a house or some kind of a hut that used to be there.
Is that the boat you found? No, that was in Oak Beach, right?
Yeah,
What you're
yeah,
talking about?
Oak
Okay,
Beach,
no,
yeah.
we were on. Yeah, we were on
So,
Gilgo.
so I said, but what it triggered in my mind was I'd found it last August in another walkthrough I did. Try to get it in August was impossible. Anyway, it triggered in my mind that it could be. Why is somebody maintaining a punt in the marsh? Because they're using it in the marsh, and so it could be that in the mosquito canals, a boat could have been used to tow her body down to where it was.
Remember those little canals we saw yesterday? Huh?
Yeah, I was
Did you
out there
go over and
walking.
look?
We were on Gilgo, walking back there. We walked pretty far. We went to the Coastal Cove guard or whatever out there.
Coast Guard.
Yeah, out there on that beach, like where all the clams and stuff were.
Okay.
I was checking those little water pockets and stuff. I checked the little canals. I found a bunch of odd things on Google Earth. I found one, we're gonna fly the drone to it because you can't get to it unless you take a boat. And it's on this little marshy island, but it's a big blue tarp and it's rolled up. So I put the coordinates on. We're gonna fly the drone out and see what that is. Found quite a few like clothing items out there yesterday.
Where?
Just
Same area?
yeah, a little bit before we found, I tried to walk up this hill that was, I mean, completely just overgrown and stuff, because I don't see the police doing that. And I was right, because no one's walked through that.
Right.
I was finding things from a long time ago. I found a Reebok women's shoe that's real destroyed because it's been out there for a long time. I don't know. I've tried to look and see if they found any of the clothing or if there's anything that they didn't find with them. Like I found a flip-flop that looked like Megan Waterman's from the video. But again, I don't know what.
Yeah, but what's interesting about what you found is that they ought to have found those things, and likewise have probably taken them in and examined them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, collected this junk for what it's worth. It may be more than junk,
Right.
and maybe it's just junk. But they should, you know, good work would require it, I think, that they don't disregard that.
We also found ripped underwear that's been degraded.
Female underwear?
Couldn't tell. It's pretty degraded. Even when I was picking it up, trying to pull it out, it was under. Yeah, it was under a. What do you think that was? Like an old piece of carpet.
Yeah.
But it literally has been there so long that it was attached to the ground, like the roots were growing up. So I had to use a lot of force to pull it. And when I pulled it, that's where the underwear was. So when I tried to pull the underwear, it started to just.
Was it near the water or near the?
Yeah, it was near the water. Up a little bit. So.
Fascinating. But anyway, I was going to say is that right after I told Kevin Byra that about the boat, I said it could be. It indicates that there's a way to have gotten into the marsh, a man such as Hackett or somebody, or a woman for that matter, and towed the body. So the canals are in such a configuration that the walk from a canal to where she's found is not very far.
Mm-hmm. I haven't been out to that area yet. That's the only area I haven't been out to, because I don't know.
You guys need to look there, because Byra brought it up himself. He said, he said to me, how could possibly a man have brought that body all the way to where it was through the marsh? It just doesn't look like that could have been done. And I said, well, contrarily, it could have been done. We walked the marsh, both of us, and she was the same size as Shannon, and you know, we walked it at the same time in the same week, anniversary wise, that she disappeared, so that we encountered the same weather. We checked, made sure the weather was comparable and so on, the early morning hours that we went out there. And we found that once you got past the initial entry, and there are entry spots, you could get in there,
right,
without having to get through all the brambles. Once you got in, and if we didn't follow the police area where they had chopped down if you went through the unchopped areas of the marsh. You could get through there. You know, it's a pain in the ass. You guys, you know what I mean. It's up this high, and you're pulling in your stamp, but you could do it.
Right, it's possible.
And there were pathways as well you could find. So it's possible that somebody easily could have taken her, a big person maybe, or more than one person taking her to where she was, or that she walked with somebody in there and then they killed her on the spot where she was found. I mean, there's no clear evidence of what actually did happen. So why disregard
Everything.
these theories in favor of an absurd theory that she just dropped dead suddenly by herself?
Doesn't make any sense.
You know, when there's these others. So when I told them about the canal business, next thing you know, a day later, they had 2 drones up flying over. So they were, it triggered their thinking. I'm pretty sure. You know, which is good. You know, that's what.
That is good. And I mean, once they found Shannon, they didn't even keep going. Right? They stopped once they found Shannon.
They did a really
Poor job.
weak job on the work. But that's not necessarily per se the police. The police didn't do a good job. That's given on that. But the medical examiner's office, a supposedly independent office in the county government, did an appallingly bad job of the autopsy and the extraction of her from the marsh. They brought an archaeologist, they're called, okay, to come and look at the bones and what have you in the site where they're found.
They brought an archaeologist, not an anthropologist?
It may have been
or anthropologist. Okay, I was going to say that's
archaeological anthropologist. And what's the obvious thing you do when you find the bones?
Take part of the ground.
You take the ground underneath. They didn't. They took
They
a little bit. Apparently, nobody sifted through anything. And since there were bones missing, the toes and the fingers, to me that's fairly important.
I only found bones yesterday, and they were bird bones. I thought they were finger bones at first. That was all the bones that I found. And we found one dead duck or something, and that was it. No other. We didn't find any animal tracks, anything else that even, I wouldn't even hear animals. No deer, anything like that. They would have ran from us walking through all that stuff.
Well, there's plenty of animals there, apparently.
Yeah.
I saw some of them. I saw a huge bird. There's a bird that's like an eagle sized bird. And it's amazing what you can see there. But
I didn't see any big animals for that bone.
Well, they're talking about small animals. The medical examiner, a young woman who was inexperienced from what I learned, said, oh, the missing bones are missing because little animals probably took them. The finger bones, which...
I mean, it's possible, but I doubt it.
So I'm assuming that they must have experienced that before somewhere else with some other body, but I don't know that to be true. But the hyoid bone was missing the horns.
Right.
Of the bone. These 2 horns are missing. And there's a hole in the center of the base of the bone going directly through the bone, which does not exist in hyoid bones.
Right.
Okay. So
that's another thing. I wonder if they even looked for an object that could have done that out there in the marsh.
Well, she said it's probably little animals that nibbled at them and took them. They would only nibble off the horns, and then this. I guess I think it's possible. But why would you make that assumption
without actually
and
knowing?
Make it a fact.
Right.
Do you think it's just incompetence on her part?
Yeah. But caveat is that the medical examiner's office is completely under the thumb of the police. They do whatever the cops tell them to do and say whatever the cops tell them to say.
Right.
I've experienced that in other cases. So they're not independent. They're not psychologically independent. The cops know better kind of thing is what they, so how much influence did that impact this? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a thought, right? So I thought maybe this search was triggered by the bone.
That's what I thought about the.
Called you, they haven't called me.
Nope, it's weird. I don't know. It's odd. I even Josh Zeman even messaged me and asked if anything's came from it. I said they won't call me back or anything. What should I do? He hasn't messaged me back since then. But I was gonna go back to Suffolk County, the police department, and tell them like, hey, if you don't let me know anything, the next call that I make, if I find anything else, is going to be to CNN or a news company.
Right.
So then you'll have to say something.
Yeah. I mean, have they tried to stop you from going in there?
No, they can't. It's public property.
They might be able to. I don't know.
If it's an active crime scene, they could, but it's not.
Yeah.
There's not an active
I
crime
don't know.
scene. So that's what we also do. We also travel the country doing constitutional. We do First and Second Amendment audits and stuff like that.
You do?
So we're pretty well with public property.
Are you?
Yeah.
Right.
So, is it true that you were trying to show the police Shannon Gilbert's devices, like her phones and laptops, and they didn't want to even hear about that?
That's true.
That's extremely bizarre. I'm no expert, but that's...
Do you still have any of that,
I gave
by the
it
way?
Finally, they took it.
They finally took it? Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
When Rodney Harrison came with Kevin Byra and some other detectives to my office and sat where you're sitting around, they finally agreed to take them. Now, I had offered them, well, first I had obtained the phones,
Mhm.
and then a detective that was working with me at the time, former homicide detective, who was kind of working side by side with me, got the laptop from Shannon's sister.
Right.
Okay, and it was Shannon's laptop, and then I got 7 or 8 phones. I forget how many. From her mother's boyfriend in a bag, in a sack. It was not easy to get them because I kept being told, yeah, we'll give them to you, and they were never given. They were held back. Finally, I drove up there twice and talked them into giving me the phones. Amongst those phones, allegedly, according to Mary Gilbert, was the phone that was found with the items that were discarded by Shannon behind Hackett's home, or discarded by somebody anyway.
Right.
And supposedly that phone was given back to Mary, according to Mary. It wasn't clear to me that that was true, and she never identified which one of the phones, was in that bag was the original. So we took them back. I went to a fellow named Kessler who operated a company called Kessler International, and he's a local guy I had used once before, and he volunteered to try to get into them to see what was there and test their value. He had a really difficult time
Getting into them?
Getting into them. I don't know how skilled he was. Pretty skilled from what I was told, but not highly skilled. We have people out in California or somewhere who have better equipment to do this. Okay, so we were able to discover there was a family name. There's a name of somebody in there whose family lived in Bethpage, which is on Long Island in Nassau County, and Shannon was in contact with him, and all I could get on that family was that they flipped the property about 6 or 7 times through a series of names, and that was it. Nothing more. We couldn't get much more off of the others. We got some numbers, but they were no consequence, and that was it. So as far as we could see, they were washed away with time. I don't know, but so Kessler gave them back. I labeled them all. I marked them, as exhibits, and I kept them here. Told the police I had them, and when we formally told the police I had them, I sent the detective to homicide to say, here's Jon Ray's analysis of the case, synopsis and analysis. Up until then, it was in 2016, and here's, we have his photos of the items. Do you want them? Police took my analysis and synopsis for a day or so, and then gave it back. Called up the detective and said, "We don't want it. It's useless." I mean, it wasn't useless by any stretch of the imagination when you see it. Any reasonable person would know it wasn't useless.
Right.
And never came for the the phones. So I had 2 other occasions that I met with the chief detective working on the case, Pat Portella, when he came to my office for different reasons. And I said to him, hey, by the way, I said, in my back room, I have these items. If you guys want them, they're there for you. Never took them. So finally, when Rodney Harrison emerged with his whole new approach, he made the appointment to come and see me. They came, we talked, and he said, yeah, we will take them. And I gave it to him.
And you haven't heard anything back since?
Nothing. I doubt they're of any use.
Yeah.
You know, but you never know.
Yeah, you never know.
There's evidence. You don't discard evidence or ignore it. They did.
Exactly. I can't believe they waited this long to release the Megan Waterman tape. I mean, what are you going to say? Do you guys remember this? If you stayed at this hotel, did you see her get into another car? It's like that was, what, how, like 14 years later?
Yeah. Who would remember that?
No one would. Now, if you would have done it, like, once
Unless you saw this strutting girl and you said, hey, man, wow, and you remembered it or something, I don't know. Anything like that's possible, but the closer in time to when it happened, the more valuable it would have been to have released it.
Exactly.
Didn't.
And they haven't even released any outside footage of it.
No,
which
I know, which makes no sense.
Why would you? I mean, it just shows her in the lobby. Why would you even hold that?
So why have this press conference all the years later to release that footage?
I thought they had the press conference after what I found, because that was pretty weird.
Probably right.
Because that was the 26th of March, and then they had the press conference like the 7th of April, 8th of April.
That makes sense. Well, tomorrow's Shannon's anniversary that she disappears. Remember, May 1st.
Yep.
2010.
Are you going to do anything? Are you going to go to the grave or anything? No?
I don't put on those. I work at this. That's just showmanship.
Oh, yeah. But...
You know what I mean? And sometimes that works. That has, because it keeps it alive.
Yeah.
So it has its very limited value to go there and put on an emotional show, at her grave. I mean,
yeah.
We did that already. We buried her.
Right.
I found the guy that was willing to let her be buried for free.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a ceremony, and that's that. But
wow.
maybe they'll release the tapes tomorrow. I have the word of the police commissioner that they will release the tapes. It's only a question of time.
I've been waiting for that. That's.
What do you think the reasoning is to wait?
I don't know. I mean, his statement first was, "We're going to release the tapes." He sat right there and said that to me, and he, I think, surprised his detectives. Okay, and then he comes out a few days later when somebody confronts him and says, "Are you releasing the tapes?" And he says, "Yes, we are, but only if it doesn't interfere with the police investigation."
But that makes no sense.
Which is the position they've been taking right along for why they didn't release them.
But it contradicts their own investigation, because they said that she died of misadventure.
Right.
And that's on the death report. So if she died of misadventure, how is that?
No, they say unknown causes.
Oh, they changed it to unknown causes now?
Yeah, I don't think it was ever said misadventure on
death by misadventure?
I think that's a phrase somebody used, but I don't think it was on the report.
Okay.
It's so long since I've done some of this, but I don't think so.
Yeah, okay.
But in any event, he said he would do it. Then he changed it and said he would do it only if. And then he talked to me again recently. And he said, "John, we're doing it. We're releasing it. It's only a matter of when." So I said, "Okay.
You've had it for this long, just release it."
And here we are, So could it be that they're getting ready to release it? That's why they were there yesterday? Or Friday, or whatever it was. Friday, yeah. Or Thursday? Could that be the reason?
They couldn't have been there this week.
They were there this week. They were there Thursday or Friday.
Because we were there Thursday and Friday. No, we weren't there Thursday.
Friday.
We were there Friday.
I think it was Thursday. Look at my notes. I keep careful notes of everything.
Yeah, because things were moved down there. I definitely noticed that. Because there were some spots that when I went back through my footage before I even called you and found the bone,
right,
I found some things of interest.
Like what?
Like the tarp that I first originally found washed up.
Okay.
I unrolled it a little bit. Didn't really see nothing in it. But when I was going back through my video, I noticed that there was rope around it that'd been cut.
Really?
Almost like it was wrapped around the feet part where somebody was. It was right next to the... So like I imagined, if you rolled somebody up in a tarp, you wrap their feet, and then the duct tape that we found with the plastic on it could have been wrapped around the head. And then boom, dumped in the bay. And then it washes up. because, I mean, when we were there yesterday, the water was even lower than it was the first time that we were there. And we could actually walk out farther. So we know that all that stuff washes up pretty much to where that bone was.
Really? It goes up that far?
Yes. So...
But let me ask you something. What would a bone be doing washing up? It's like a rock. Unless it's floating.
Right, but see, I thought of Fire Island Jane Doe, because when she was found in '96, she was found in a plastic garbage bag on the beach, kind of buried on the sand a little bit, right there at the shore.
Those are her legs you're talking about.
Yeah, that were found, yes.
Right.
And then they found, you know, her head and teeth on near Toby Beach,
Right.
which is still on the other side of the bay.
Right.
It's not on the ocean side. So that bridge, the Jones Bridge that comes in, it's possible that somebody could have threw something out the window there and then it floated. You know, one went this way, one went that way over time.
The bag could make it float. It could have air in it. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and that could happen. But a bone by itself, the bone you found, it struck
should have
me,
sunk.
I started to think about it after you mentioned it. I said, how could that wash up by the sea? You know, why would that? Wouldn't there be a series of rocks if it were washed up like it were on the bottom of the bay?
Mm-hmm.
That it would have washed up with a bunch of pebbles and what have you. There'd be a line that you would see.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe washed away over time, but still there would be a line of debris that
Mm-hmm.
would be solid. And then I'm thinking, wait a minute, that bay doesn't get so disturbed that it washes up with big waves.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bay. The waves are only that big.
Mm-hmm.
So when there's a swelling, it's just a swelling.
Right.
So it's very unlikely that it would be stirred from the bottom and moved.
Mm-hmm.
from
Unless it
wherever
was, unless it came from that bag that I found,
Well, okay.
and it actually, you know, an animal was biting at the bag,
Okay.
maybe, and ripped it
anything
open.
else. But it's less likely that it washed up from the bottom. And if it was a floating object, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that I don't know. Does a bone float? I mean, it has all those air holes in it.
Yeah,
That's a very good question. Yeah.
Right.
No one has a human bone just laying around to test that, though. So.
But it's odd that they haven't told us one way or the other whether it was. I'll ask them.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, when we go back out, we're going to mainly search where the Asian male was found, because there's a big gap between where he was found in the Gilgo 4 and then this way until they found Jessica Taylor. So there's a huge gap right there, and I want to search it.
Okay.
So, yeah, if I find anything,
Let me know.
I'm gonna call you.
I'm,
So,
24/7.
mm-hmm. If I call this office, will it ring? Like, will it still ring to you?
Yeah, I get the calls if I'm here, but use my cell phone if you don't, because
Will you put his cell phone number?
you know,
Oh,